Hey, this is Bill Romer, and welcome to video number 1 in this series of free piano lessons. And in this series, I'm going to show you some of my favorite tips and techniques for making your piano playing sound even better than it does today. And in video number 1, I want to talk about how to make piano chords sound great, which sounds really kind of general, but I'm going to show you some very specific things you can do that will improve the sound of your chords at the piano very quickly and easily, even for very basic chords. But before we do that, I want to just review how chords are built at the piano. And as someone with a mathematical and engineering background, I love this part of the piano. I do love the creative part of it, but I also love this nice structured part of it too. So chords are built with a series of whole steps and half steps. So if we look at a C major chord, this is middle C right here on my keyboard. Then a C major chord is made with C, E, and G, those three notes. Now if you notice this, the way the keys are laid out, the distance from any key on the piano to another key nearby, the closest key is a half step, either down or up. Any key, can be black or white, doesn't matter. So every key is one half step from the key next to it, the note next to it, all right? And 2 half steps is a whole step. Doesn't matter what color key you end up on or anything. So for example, if I start here on E, a half step up is F, a half step down is E flat. A whole step up is 1, 2, F sharp, and a whole step down is D. All right, so we have half steps and whole steps. If I go up the keyboard in half steps, I get a chromatic scale, it's called. Or back down again also. All right, so half steps and whole steps. You probably know that already. Now, a C major chord, C, E, and G, if you look at this for a second, you'll see that you start on the root, the C, and this E is 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps above the C, and the G is 1, 2, 3 half steps above the E. This interval down here is also called a major third, or just a third. And this interval on top is called a minor third. 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3. And this is 4 half steps. Now, any major chord has exactly the same structure, no matter where you are on the keyboard. You can start with any note that you want. They all have the same structure for a major chord, which we were just talking about. So for example, A flat. We start here, and first, let's put my thumb there, we go up 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our major third. Then we go up 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3. A minor third up from there. And there's A flat major. We can do F sharp. We go up 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 3. 1, 2, 3. And there's F sharp major, or G flat if you like. So if you ever forget how to play a certain chord, in this case a major chord, you can always go back to your C major chord, which most people just know. That's one of the first things they learn at the piano. And look at the structure of that chord, and then move that structure to anywhere else that you want. You can even move up and down the keyboard a half step at a time and get all the chords, all the major chords. So I can go from C, D flat, or C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, G flat, G, A flat, A, B flat, B, and we're back to C. All right, so we maintained that structure with the 4 half steps and the 3 half steps on top as we went up the keyboard. That gave us all of our major chords. Now for minor, it's kind of the flip side of that. So it's 3 and then 4. So 1, 2, 3 to get a minor third, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also think of it as the major chord, but we drop that third a half step. And minor is the same way. Let's pick another key. So if that's C minor, remember we have 3 half steps and then 4. Let's play, I don't know, A minor. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's A minor. E flat minor would be E flat, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. E flat minor. Works the same for diminished. So here's C major, here's C minor, here's C diminished. So both the 3rd and the 5th are dropped down a half step. And any other key is the same way. G diminished would be G. And, well, let's look at the structure of that chord. So C diminished, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's 2 minor thirds stacked on top of each other. So, I think we said G, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's G diminished. Again, that works in any key. Same for augmented. With augmented, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 2 major thirds stacked on top of each other. So if we want to play a B flat augmented, we can start here, B flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's B flat augmented. All right? So all chords of a certain type have the same structure and they can be applied to any key. So again, if you ever forget, you can always go back to a simple key like the key of C, look at the structure of that chord, figure it out in terms of half steps, and well, just half steps is fine, and then apply that to whatever key that you want. All right? Now, another nifty thing to have is what's called inversions. So that's when we play the notes in a different order. So I was just playing root position there with the root on the bottom. So there's C in root position. If I take this C and move it to the top, I get first inversion of C major. If I move this E to the top, I get second inversion. If I move the G to the top, I'm back to root position, just an octave higher. Okay, so that's an inversion. And there are several reasons we have inversions and why they're really helpful, which I'll talk about in just a minute here as we get into more about how to make chords sound good. So the first step I have for you is to always keep your chords in the area around middle C. And inversions will help you do that because instead of having to play the chord in root position, let's say if that's G or G down here, I can play it right around here like this. So this is the G major chord, first inversion. So there's G major, root position, move the G to the top, and there it is in first inversion. And it's not that big a difference, but it does, I think, sound a little better this way than it does either up here, a little too thin, or down here. Getting a little bit low, but still not bad. But right in here, right around middle C is the sweet spot for making chords sound good. And so we can have F, we can have a C major chord. This is one of my favorite sounding chords. It's just a simple C major chord with this middle C in the middle. So E on top, G down here. This is actually second inversion of middle C, or of C major chord. For example, if we had a C major chord here, which sounds sort of low and muddy, and I took this C to the top, there's first inversion. Take this E to the top, there's second inversion. That just has a nice sound to it. Okay, so inversions help us to be able to play our chords right around middle C, which is important to make them sound great. Now, another thing that really needs to happen to make your chords sound great at the piano is a nice strong bass, a note or a couple notes for support. So instead of just playing the C chord, if I add that bass note in the left hand, that really rounds the whole thing out. Then I can play an F major, G major, F major. Now I'm starting to get that full piano sound, adding that bass in for support. I can even do it in octaves, so I can play, which adds some extra strength. And you'll notice the lower I go, the more beef it adds there. that is octaves, and it's just the root of the chord. But it really has a different sound. And the higher you get with your bass note, the kind of weaker it's going to sound. So if I played a C here, and then an F up here, and a G. Now if I play it down here, hear that difference? Now, if I play octaves, it really almost sounds like more sounds are added than are there, just from the way those low bass notes sound. And we did add an octave, so we did add one note, but it almost seems like lots more notes are added there, which is a great sound for your chords. Okay, so we got the strong bass support. We use inversions so we can play our chords around middle C. Now, another important way to make your chords sound great when they're moving in particular is what's called good voice leading. So instead of jumping your chords around all over the place, so from here to say an F, to a G, to a C again, like that, to an F, maybe a G. The best thing you can do to make those smooth transitions while you're playing chords is to make the voice leading good, meaning you want to find the nearest inversion of a chord from where you are to where you want to get to. So let's say I want to play from a C major chord here in second inversion, and my next chord is an F major. So I could jump down here or jump up here to play it in root position, but the closest way I can play an F major chord is just by moving these two notes and keeping this one the same. It's right there. So we went from a C major in second inversion to an F major in first inversion. There's root position, there's first inversion. So if I went to the F then, and my next chord was a G very close to this, everything moves up a whole step. And there's G. Now if I want to go right back to C major again, then the closest C major chord is right there. And that's what's referred to as good voice leading, because the notes and the chords did not jump around and sound disjoint to the listener, okay? That smooth movement is called good voice leading. So, one last tip for you before we close out this video, and it gets too long, is when you're playing a melody with your chords, this is the final way, or another way that inversions help you. You want to keep your melody on top of the chords that you're playing. So, if my melody is a G, and then my next chord is an F major, but my melody is an A, then I would want to play that, and not that. I don't want the melody to get muddled up in between the chord tones, because you will lose it. As you move up the keyboard, the notes stand out more. So the note on the top of a chord up here stands out a little more than the note below and more than the note below that, which is why you want to keep your melody on top of the chords, and that's where you can use inversions to do that, because if you need to pick an inversion close by to keep the melody on top, then that's what you want to do. All right? Okay, this got a little bit longer than I hoped, but I hope that gives you some great ideas for making your chords sound terrific. And we played just with very basic chords here, right? C major, F major, for example, G major. You can do this in any key now that you know how to build those chords using that structure. There's A flat, G flat, again with good voice leading, so that the next chord doesn't jump too far away from where you are. All right? So I hope you can start applying that and you're playing right away, or at least start thinking about it as you're playing through whatever music you're working on right now, and maybe something that you haven't thought of before or that you can use in your next lesson or the next song that you're working on. All right? So stay tuned for video number 2 coming up very shortly, and in that video we're going to talk about how to make an even better bass line with your left hand. We'll go into a lot more depth about your left hand, and it'll really make things sound interesting then too. Not just from a rhythmic, but also a harmonic standpoint, I should say. All right, so thank you for watching video number 1, how to make piano chords sound great, and I look forward to talking with you again in video number 2. We'll see you then.